Hello and welcome to Media Lite, where we dig into media that we care about right now. Kris, how do you feel with this little shakeup to the intro today for the Minisode?
You know what? I think when you first pitched me this, I was first of all just psyched at the concept because we're both passionate guys, especially about the things we love. And so the idea really sat well with me, but the new branding I think is brilliant.
Oh yeah, I mean, typically we are here trying to talk about something that's evergreen, something that's been with us for our lives, or something that's been with our guests for their entire lives. I've got this great new friend. We've got our own podcast, and I was trying to figure out how can we talk about the media that we care about in the moment, that we just can't wait to talk about. The things that might turn out to be those future classics that we do a deep dive into someday. So Kris, which property has the honor of being the subject of our first Media Lite Minisode?
So we were going to talk about X-Men. I was really excited because I've been loving 97. I think you have been too. But then Bluey happened. I mean, we knew the episode was going to, but once it had, and I watched it day of premiere, I knew there was nothing else I wanted to talk about. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We're here to talk about the most recent episode of Bluey season 3, The Sign. And Bluey has been a favorite show of mine since my wife and I started watching it with our daughter. She's now almost 5. And so we began watching it probably around the time that she was 2 or 3 years old. The closer she gets to their ages, the more fun the watch becomes. But it's like part therapy for me and for my wife, right? We're processing all of our own stuff. You're processing right now parent stuff. And you're watching your child also be reflected there on screen. So Bluey is big in our household. What about you, Randy?
I could not agree with you more, Kris. I have 2 kids, which means children's television has been a big part of my life. And I've seen a zillion cartoons come and go. Some of them are fine. Some of them might give me a laugh. There was a moment or two where I cared about Peppa Pig because, there's a gag or two for the parents mixed in with honestly a pretty dumb episode just about every single time. When I first tuned into Bluey, I assumed it might just be the same thing. And I just very quickly found myself falling in love with some incredibly in-depth storytelling, some thoughtful and complex themes that typically go way beyond some simple moral of the story. We're speaking to parents, we're speaking to kids, and I genuinely believe there is something here for anyone who is still in touch with any little piece of their imagination. In this most recent episode, The Sign, this was the culmination of season 3, and this 28-minute monster episode, it was just incredible. It could have served as a series finale, though we have been promised more Bluey. So, Kris, this is supposed to be a mini-sode, and we could both talk all night. But I think maybe it's time to get into our questions and just take a quick look at an instant classic.
We are going to start light, and I think what we'll do is start with some fun, with some gags, and we'll work our way up to the emotional depths of the episode. So here, just to begin with, we'll start with our top 3 gags and jokes. The things that made us chuckle before the tears inevitably flowed. But that's where we'll start. We'll go one at a time. I think we can start with you, Randy.
I'm going to go with one of my favorite gags in this episode was Bucky, the sleazy real estate agent. Now, this guy was a piece of work. Listen, he's a real estate agent. He has to advertise somehow. But he has like a life-size decal of himself on the side of his own car. We're not even like on the side of a bus or whatever in town. He's riding around in this thing. And every time he talks to Bandit, he goes into this really obnoxious schmoozy mode. He's calling him Banditus, the big B, Bandito. And I didn't like this guy, and he just rubbed me the wrong way, but I did get a kick out of it.
Love that, dude. I think we've talked about Modern Family. I'm a big Phil Dunphy fan, and this guy was definitely giving me like stereotypical Phil Dunphy real estate agent. That was great. Well, I think for me, I also didn't really rank them. I mostly just went kind of chronologically through the episode, but I think I'll start here. Really simple, really light. Bluey does this fantastic job. The animators are always giving you something that fills in the world and just makes it feel real and lived in. Later, Muffin will spill a drink because she wants to also have a cup holder. From the second she sees that Bluey has a cup holder, you see her eyes begin to rove. Bluey and Chili are having the main conversation in the front seat, but you see Muffin's eyes working. Little moments like that. But for me, the thing that I really enjoyed that stood out, did you notice that Binks's drawn on her shins at one point in the episode?
I did, yes.
It's never remarked upon. It's never acknowledged in any way. It plays no bearing in the plot. It's just she's a small child, and small children like to draw on themselves. And so she's got two little smiley faces in different colors on her shins, and they start to wear off over the course of the episode, and they linger for longer than they ought to. She was cleaned up for wedding day, but throughout the whole day beforehand, those faces are sort of fading. And I love that.
Yeah, that's the perfect attention to detail alongside that messy back seat of the car, so often featured in an episode, including this one. That's a great pick, Kris. All right, number 2. I'm going to go with Uncle Stripe Party God. This guy, this guy was out of control at this wedding. He's cutting it up on the dance floor, flying like an eagle. He steals the bouquet. He is the one who kicks off the dancing after the toast. And then, of course, this whole gag culminated in Uncle Stripe crawling out of the neighbor Wendy's bushes in a daze, asking what day it was. Bluey's not afraid to go there. There's often something in there for the grown-ups in the background. And now we know where Muffin gets her big party energy.
He starts off, he blows up Uncle Ed's spot as far as moving Frisky out west after the wedding. I just wrote in my notes, Stripes is a savage. So I was ready to go off on Stripes too. Okay, so for my number 2, Calypso reads in the story of the farmer. But before that, the kids question why all stories have a happy ending. Kids just take that as their opportunity to go off naming the sad things they've experienced in the world. And it's like equal parts heartwarming, charming, and hilarious, because that's what children are, right? Your first kid talks about a pet that ran away. I asked my mom if they'd come back. She said probably not. And then Rusty just chimes in, "Oh, I bet a snake got it." Just totally insensitive. But that's kids. Though that's kid. Wasn't trying to be hurtful. Was just being a kid. You hear the young man talk about how his dad doesn't live with his mom anymore, and now he's lonely all the time. And one of the terriers chimes in, "Oh, my mom likes your dad." Absolutely, just like charming to the max. And then the wrong takeaways after the farm story. They just the message went right over their heads. So I just loved that moment. Kids being kids in class with Calypso.
All right. So my last one for my main picks in the gag section is just going to be early, the first third of the episode. The grown-ups are prepping for the wedding, and we hear, I think, every single adult give their own rendition of the theme song for a show called The Cat Squad. Na 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 na, Cat Squad. And that feeling of having a kid's television show theme stuck in your head, and you just can't help but belt it out. So relatable, so fun, and loved hearing all those different takes. All right, Kris. So what's your last key gag from this episode?
I'm just gonna abuse going last and smuggle in 3 real quick. Chili says that she and Frisky used to come up here as teenagers to think. Just a great little joke in there for the adults, as Bluey is wanting to do. Front seat for Bluey, absolutely adorable. What a wonderful little running gag from the moment she jumps into the front seat to the moment she jumps out. I loved that amidst the tragedy of what's happening to her, right? It's a very emotional episode for Bluey. She's processing a lot in her little life. She's still a kid, and kids are easily distracted, and they're very in the moment. And in the moment she's in the front seat, she's so happy. And then we're flower girls. That being repeated over and over again and being such an obsession of these young children. I've got a daughter. I'm very blessed to be a girl dad. I'm able to be a flower girl just once. And you better believe that was the honor of a lifetime, one that she cannot wait to reclaim. She's constantly asking my brother, my wife's sister, to please get married soon so that she can be a flower girl again. This is a big moment for a young woman. And so I love that they were desperate.
Well, while we're smuggling, just two quickies from me as well. Just got to shout out our girl Muffin. You know, she is incapable of walking slowly as a flower girl. She needs help from Bluey for that. She is later just absolutely smashing the xylophone at the playgrounds. You could not say she was playing it musically. Later, she is smashing the coin slot on the viewfinder because Muffin can only go hard. It's her only setting. One other quick shout out, which is to Uncle Rad, a character we've met only a few times, but you know, he's a cool dude. He's got these long flowing locks. And when he impresses Frisky by figuring out where she must be, he does not step up to the gazebo steps like a normal person. He like hops in over the back of the gazebo. And I was like, this guy is too damn cool, Kris. I just can't keep up. And I loved it.
My kind of guy. I love Uncle Radley. I was shocked to find out that Uncle Radley is the eldest Healer brother. I would have thought that he was the youngest. He calls Bandit little brother at one point, meaning we know Bandit is older than Stripes. Stripes is the youngest. Bandit must be the middle. Blew me away. I would have bet big bucks that Radley was the youngest.
That's a great catch. I fully missed that this entire time, and I appreciate it. Speaking of detective work, there is a moment when Frisky and Chili are out front on the steps, taking a little breather from the festivities at the wedding. And we only catch the tail end of their conversation. Chili says, "I did not." And I can only assume this is Frisky finally calling Chili out for orchestrating the double babysitter situation that introduced her to Uncle Rad. Because we all knew that was a setup. That had to be what they were talking about.
Love that. Yeah. I mean, that's my canon from now on, regardless of the truth. That's great.
Oh, for sure. Now, Kris, we just kind of slipped in there already to Easter eggs. And I'm looking at my Easter eggs, and they're also pretty emotional. So I was thinking, let's move to our next topic, our next little roundtable discussion. And listen, at the end of the day, this episode was about all of the healers learning how to process the possibility of change in their lives. Yes, they do end up back in their own home through a series of very emotional decisions. But they also, I think, all found a healthy way to accept this change in their lives before they got what they secretly all wanted and what we as fans all wanted deep down. So, Kris, I'm going to kick it to you first. What were some of your favorite emotional moments and or Easter eggs in this episode? Because quite frankly, the Easter eggs, even in and of themselves, were pretty emotional.
I took an Easter egg before we began recording and I put it in emotional moments because it was so darn emotional. When Brandy arrived at the wedding and she greets Chili and she's got her baby bump, I don't know why, but immediately the floodgates opened and I just wept. First episode when we met Brandy was a powerfully emotional episode, one of the best of Bluey in my opinion. And it was as simple as seeing her and understanding all of the context, and I just wept. It was so wonderful.
Yeah, to know that Brandy's been dealing with those fertility issues, it's put her in a place of isolation where she's only met her nieces a couple of times. And to know that, you know, that pregnancy was something that she wanted and now she seems to be there. Yeah, incredibly touching. In that same vein, I'll keep it on the Easter eggs. I nearly cried when we saw Nana crying at the wedding and then a hand comes off the screen and there is Grandpa Bob, who we have not seen since season 1, Grannies. If you're a Bluey diehard, people have been speculating about this character's death for years now. And sure enough, he just pops in. Apparently, he's been on a personal quest to find himself in India, but now he's back and better than ever. Baba is back, which also reminds me of the family car, which apparently is nicknamed Bobo.
Bobo, love that.
which was another great find. Look at that. I already did another smuggle. You got any more Easter eggs, or are you ready to dive into emotional moments?
You know what? I will acknowledge that with the grandpa's return, we also got to enjoy the return of the floss. And so I was happy to see that.
Yes.
Real quick Easter egg beats without emotion. Bingo playing the running game in the car with her fingers, something we've all done in our lives.
Yes.
The return of Flappy, which had huge bearing on the overall plot, but not the most emotional beat. But Flappy comes back, beautiful butterfly. Oh, hello, good to see you again, Bingo says. And just Bandit pretending to fall asleep while playing on the swings with Bingo, because it's one of Bandit's best dad moves. Any lightweight smuggles you want to drop in before we go emotional?
Just one more. I would be remiss if I did not shout out the return of the Busker, who has appeared in a few episodes, most famously in Dance Mode. And this character is modeled after Bluey composer Joff Bush. And yeah, he shows up as a DJ, and we get one more chance to rock out to Dance Mode together, which was a total joy. But Kris, this episode was just so darn emotional. It was really about the healers and their moves. So, what was one of your top emotional moments for that family and their journey together?
I have a definitive number one overall, so I'll save that. But other than that, number one overall, I think it's hard to rank them. So I'll go maybe the first time I really felt ready to cry in this episode was after Calypso read The Farmer. So that whole sequence was emotional from the moment she began reading, right? Calypso, as she's wont to do, sees what her class needs in that moment and decides to read a second story because they've just finished one. She reads The Farmer. I'm familiar with that story, so that story in and of itself is sort of a bit of an Easter egg. And I'm already gearing up the tears as I understand what Calypso is guiding these children toward understanding. But the idea that things will work out the way they're supposed to, not the way we want them to. That's not what Calypso says. The way they're supposed to is a powerfully hopeful message for people at all ages, but especially a child, when each new tragedy is the worst thing that's ever happened to you because your world is still so new and small. Belief that there will be good and there will be bad, but even those in the moment are hard to really understand in terms of how they'll fit into the big, big picture of our lives. Sometimes the good actually doesn't go for the way you wanted it to and turns out to have been a bad. The bad becomes good. Life is the peace we can make in living with those warring possibilities and just trusting that things will work out. And in the meantime, we'll see.
Yeah, beautiful stuff. And we see it takes Bluey a while to fully understand that lesson. And the car ride just after that, she kind of breaks Bandit's heart because he's trying to chase a job, and it seems to be in the interest of his family. This does not seem to be an ego-driven sort of move. And then, Kris, were you aware of the unique way that Calypso's story makes its way into the final moments of the episode?
All of these little moments of luck or good luck or bad luck, the lucky coin that got stuck, all of those circumstances cascading to the ultimate result.
For sure. And like my next moment is when Bluey reaches the moment of emotional growth that she can step up to help her sister Bingo. She retells the story. She remembers that some of her classmates were confused that the horse did not have a name. So when Bingo asks for one, she just comes up with one on the spot, which was great. And to be able to pass that lesson on was maybe the most touching element of the episode. But Kris, a song kicks in for that final montage. We get some lyrics in the song, which is pretty rare for Bluey. And this is actually what I was referring to. This is actually a song called Lazarus Drug by Meg Washington. None other than the voice of Calypso is the artist singing us out at the end of the episode.
Really? Great little nugget there. I didn't know that. How wonderful. I'll have to go and listen to some of her work. That's really dope. Not surprised. Bluey seems to be a production heavily influenced by music and musicians.
No, Kris, I kind of smuggled in all of mine. I have a theory that we might have the same number one. So I was thinking if you have one or two more, I'll let you hit them.
Well, let me real quick, surface level. I'll give you a quick one. I'm just going to dance it off. Right? Chili at one point at the sitting there with Bluey and with Frisky. And instead of trying to figure all this out, I'm just going to dance, which then leads into a wonderful sequence that we can all enjoy. My wife is a dancer. She's a dance teacher. She owns a dance studio. Dance is a really big part of her family's life. It's become a part of my life as a result. I see it as a part of my daughter's life, and it's a form of expression that I find so beautiful, so cathartic. And I think we could all relate to Chili in that moment. But mostly what I was feeling was the way I was like, fuck this, I'm just going to dance because that is something that I can control, was really moving. So this episode was particularly touching to me because we moved a lot growing up. We moved a ton. I lived in a few different towns and quite a few different houses. But we only sold a house once. It's a house we lived in when I was in middle school. It was these 3 or 4 beautiful years at the highlight of my childhood. And leaving that house was a tough thing, a really tough thing. And so the whole moving process in this episode, but ultimately culminating in a moment that I really wish could have happened for me as a child. And I'm so happy happened for Bingo and for Bluey, for the whole Healer family, and especially for Bandit in that moment, who's just trying to be the best dad and husband that he can be and doing what the world would tell him is the wisest and best way to be that good husband and father is go get that job and earn as much as you can and give the kids the best advantage they can have in life. But Louis says it earlier, I don't want a better life. I want this life. And being a parent, being in charge of children in any way as the grown up to a child, it's so effing hard to know what the real right thing to do is. And for Bandit to have received just the perfect culmination of signs from the universe, the communication to him that, no, taking your family away and chasing the bigger job with more money, that's not what's right. This is what's right. And he gets to just rip that sign out of the ground. He hasn't told the family what happened on the phone. He just got out of the car quietly and he ripped the sign from the ground. And then he's tackled by his wife, who the whole episode was doing her damnedest to support him and to be there for the kids. But we as the audience could see every sideways glance from Chili throughout the episode. We knew exactly how much she also didn't want to move. But long before she's ever having that honest parent moment with Bluey that I think we've all experienced once or twice. Like, no, I was saying those things for you for this purpose. We knew. But then when she tackles Bandit and they can just really be together, probably for the first time in a long time, I can imagine in their marriage, this has been something keeping a small bubble between them. In true Healer fashion, they're emotionally healthy. They've made peace with the decision, with the change. Chili has stood next to her husband and said that we will face this thing together. But then ultimately they're delivered. And he gets to rip that sign from the ground and keep his family where they want to be. And it meant a lot to a child living inside of me. I was so happy for those little children. It was big.
Yeah, Kris, we do have the same moment, but for different reasons, right? I'm a homebody. I live in my hometown. I've not had this experience, but this is going to sound like a little bit of a curveball, but have you ever seen the 1975 film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yeah.
At the end of that film, the character Chief just uses, both his physical strength, which is fueled by emotional catharsis, to rip a marble control panel off of the washing room floor. And that was all I could think of as Bandit struggled with that sign and summoned something up. And it was this joyful moment, but what made it so special to me is I wouldn't call it rage because there was so much joy behind it, but the frustration and anxiety he was releasing in that moment, and even like the fairly surprisingly almost violent action of like throwing that sign like right into that cul-de-sac is not like a Bandit Healer move that I would expect. Presumably they dragged it back out of the way once things settled down a little bit. But there's a lot going on there. I thought of something my wife said. She she predicted that perhaps back in the episode Stickbird, Bandit was dealing with some sort of anxiety that was distracting him, and she wondered if it was possibly related to him contemplating this move. Do I follow this opportunity? Do I pack it all up? And maybe he's been dealing with this for a while. So like, to acknowledge how ugly and angry those feelings can be, as well as the beauty of it, is great. And then the family gets to walk back into their house. It's been emptied by the movers, but they're seeing it like for the first time through new eyes. And it's beautiful. We've been told we're getting more Bluey. I hope that we do. But if something were to change during this sort of indefinite hiatus we're in, for me, it would be a perfectly phenomenal series finale if it had to be. What do you think, Kris? Could this function as the finale if something changed and we never got Bluey back, or if Bluey comes back and it's not quite the same Bluey that we know now?
Yeah, it had all the familiar beats, right? If you've seen the series finale of Full House or the series finale of any great sitcom over the years, everybody comes back, right? It's a who's who throughout the episode. All your favorite characters get to pop in at some point. The wedding was great for that. You just looked at the background characters. You could see a whole bunch of story sitting there. The Easter eggs throughout really worked to specific callbacks, as well as just kind of general Bluey themes. Yeah, if the healers had pulled away and if they had really sold that house in that moment, I would have been satisfied. And even as it is, even with them staying, I think the staying gives us hope that the show can return. Frisky's staying, they're staying, not as much as changing as we expected. But yeah, I would totally be settled. I'd miss Bluey terribly, and it would break my heart. But I could accept this big behemoth of an episode for what it is.
Kris, thank you so much for joining me for this minisode. We love Bluey. I think you can safely expect more Bluey content from us in the future. Who knows? Maybe someday we'll be feeling sentimental and we may even come back and give this episode a full treatment. But right now, I'm just so glad that I got to chat with you about something that moved me in the moment, and I didn't have to wait for it to become a core memory in the back of my mind. How'd you feel about this mini-sode?
Yeah, same. Glad we got to talk about it so soon. Like I said, I was pretty revved to talk X-Men, but as soon as I had watched this, I had a Slack prepared to you before yours came to me to say, can we please talk Bluey instead? This was a wonderful episode of television.
Awesome. Kris, it's been an absolute joy. We should be seeing you again this Friday for some X-Files talk. We had a great chat with my friend Madison. So until then, have a fantastic night. Thank you.